Hi BookTube, I'm here with a discussion video today. This is going to be about what I look for in books. What makes a book a good book for me. So I'm going to talk about 4 things, and they're in order from what I look for the most to what I look for the least, kind of. So primarily what I look for in a book is good writing. What do I mean when I say this? I mean the constructions of words into sentences, and those sentences into paragraphs, and that paragraphs into a story, at all. I'm not talking about plot at this point. I understand that plot is a part of writing. I'm talking more about the construction of the sentences. And I like a book that doesn't just have conventional sentences, or sentences that people with just a rudimentary understanding of grammar would go look at and be like, okay, that's a grammatically correct sentence, but the sentences that I like, they'd look at and be like, oh, that's not grammatically correct, that's a run-on sentence. But it's actually grammatically correct if you understood grammar. Sorry, I'm very passionate about that. So they're grammatically correct, they're just convoluted. The grammar that you learn in high school isn't the be-all and end-all of grammar. There's more to it than that. Anyways, I just like to read this poem thingy. It's by this guy named Gravy. That's an awesome name, but his name's Gary Provost. So I'm just gonna read this. It's called "This Sentence Has 5 Words." This sentence has 5 words. Here are 5 more words. 5-word sentences are fine, but several together become monotonous. Listen to what is happening. The writing is getting boring. The sound of it drones. It's like a stuck record. The ear demands some variety. Now listen. I vary the sentence length and I create music. Music. The writing sings. It has a pleasant rhythm, a lilt, a harmony. I use short sentences, and I use sentences of medium length. And sometimes when I'm certain the reader is rested, I will engage him with a sentence of considerable length, a sentence that burns with energy and builds with the impetus of a crescendo and roll of drums, the crash of the cymbals, sounds that say, listen to this, it is important. That last bit was all one sentence, grammatically correct, but most people call it run-on because they don't know what they're talking about. Anyways, I like writing that asks you to pay attention, that calls attention to the word that's used, that the word just doesn't have that conventional, typical definition, but that the author realizes has implications, that has a history behind it, that has context behind it, that has symbolism behind it. An author that knows how to use a thesaurus if they don't have the vocabulary themselves, so they're not repeating themselves over and over again with the same words. So if a book's not written well, it's not written up to my standards, then I'm not going to like it. I may continue reading it, I may not. The next thing I look for, the second thing, is characterization. Now, I've been reading a lot of Goodreads reviews and other book blogs and stuff like that, and I really hate it when people say that they don't like unlikable characters. I'm sorry, but I do. I like characters that I would like to read about. I find they're more interesting, they're more engaging. They're people I wouldn't want to have in my life, but that I like to read about. I like unlikable characters, unreliable narrators. I don't care who and what they are as long as they're believable. Characters that kind of suddenly fall in love, or characters that suddenly change because something is said to them. Characters that are special snowflakes, those characters that the author tries to make them different by having them dress in a certain way or like certain things without actually changing their personality from anyone else. Those kind of things. Like, oh yay, they wear Converse and like Pride and Prejudice, because no one else wears Converse and likes Pride and Prejudice. But they're still the same inside as everyone else. That frustrates me. I don't like those characters. Those are unlikable characters. The next thing I look for is philosophy. I want a book that makes me think about things in different ways. I want a book that makes me feel smarter for having read it. I think that's very important. That's a very important reason why I read, and why I try to read from all different genres and everything, and why I don't like people who read just YA or just fantasy or just science fiction, or, you know, spread your wings and fly and read all these wonderful books and learn lots of things. Be a jack of all trades. Be a trivia nerd. How do you think people in Jeopardy acquire all this knowledge? They read. They, you know, I learn about Judaism from reading a science fiction novel. Like, you know, yeah, so I really like a book that has philosophy. The least important aspect of a book for me is the plot. I like books that are willing to break the convention of this happened, and this happened, and this happened, and this happened, the end. I really like, you know, like non-linear timelines, or books without plots, books that just are about characters or about presenting ideas. You know, and you know, this is honestly, as I said, not as important as the other things that I talked about. So I'm just going to give you examples of good books in each of these sections. So first of all, the best thing for me in a book is the writing. An example of this, I believe, is Gould's Book of Fish, especially the sentence construction, where I talked about, like, there's long convoluted sentences, and they, you know, there's interjections, and they're all, you know, people would look and be like, oh, that's not grammatically correct, but it is. I'm gonna shut up about grammar right now. The second thing I look for is characterization. A book with a really great character, I think, is Perfume. The character of Grenouille is really not a likable character, but he's really fascinating to read about. Not someone I'd like to have in my life, but someone who makes something interesting, who makes life interesting when you're reading it. The third thing I like in a book is philosophy, and for that I chose Snow Crash, which you really learn a lot about linguistics and religion and technology, and it's a really interesting storyline. Do me a favor, if you haven't read Ready Player One yet, go read Snow Crash first, because Ready Player One, I think, takes a lot from Snow Crash, and Snow Crash is just so much better. It is, oh, just read it. Even if you, like, drop everything and just read Snow Crash. Yeah. And as for plot, I'm gonna go with How I Live Now, by Meg Rossoff, just because it's a really well-written, well-constructed, good characters, good philosophy, good plot, is basically why I'm choosing this, and it's a YA novel. It kind of takes that idea of young females in dystopian settings, but instead of being like, oh, she has to save the world and she's super special in one way, you know, kind of idea. She's just a regular girl, and there happens to be some unregular events happening, and she has to work within them. And it's really well done. Also by Meg Rossoff, What I Was really well done, more for characterization, but I can just go on and on about that. So let me know what you think makes a good book, what you look for, what you appreciate, and have a great day.